You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle, and today we're here with arguably the most successful landscaper in the UK, Mr. Mark Gregory from Landform Consultants. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Nick, and really happy to join you. And I've made the cut. I've made the podcast, so I'm happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, you're amongst great names, as you know. So if there's anyone in the landscaping industry who hasn't heard of you, then all they need to do really is look you up on Wikipedia. So you're obviously famous because you've got to be fairly famous to get onto Wikipedia. So just to take a little quote from your entry on Wikipedia, you've been involved with 99 gardens at the Royal Chelsea Flower Show, a total of 160 show gardens for the RHS, making you the most medalled garden builder of all time within the RHS. How does that sound?
Sounds good. It's out of date, actually. It's 107 gardens at Chelsea.
Wow.
But, it is, and growing. Yeah, it's something I'm really proud of. And where did that time go? You know,
flies by, scary, isn't it? But wow, so even more than the 99. So you've broken your century. Unbelievable. So let's get cracking then. How long have you been in the industry?
Well, I'm 62, and I've been in the industry even before I left school. So I came into horticulture at 16. So I left school in 76. I did 2 years in commercial horticulture, working for a family company on heated glass, 5 acres of heated glass. And I was quite happy. I had my beer vouchers and my motorbike and finding girls and stuff like that. It was my father who just kept on to me to go to college. In the end, I kind of did it just to shut him up. So I left home at 17, 18. I did an NCH at Lancashire College of Agriculture. Then I did a 3-year diploma at Askham Bryan. So I'm qualified up to ND, National Diploma of Horticulture, with a landscape option. So yeah, a long time. Been a long time.
It is a long time, yeah. So it's just your dad. You got your dad to thank then for kicking you up the bum and getting you out there.
Yeah. So basically, I come from 2 generations of market gardeners. My father grew up on a commercial market garden, and but all his brothers, just during the war years, post-war years, became builders, bricklayers. And they were making big money in post-war development of Britain, up in the north, Yorkshire. And he became a bricklayer. And so I came along, and he was running a nursery in the evening, but working so hard as a bricklayer. He built his own house. I was surrounded by that. But my father was a frustrated gardener, probably one of the best gardeners I've ever met, actually, and untrained, but just had a natural touch for growing, loved it, passionate, almost obsessive, actually. So I grew up with him building on building sites and construction, but him knowing, and I wanted to become a builder, actually, but I surrounded myself by kind of the gardening side, and it was a no-brainer. When I was at school, I applied for an apprenticeship scheme at Savile Gardens, which might have been changed, but I was out of my comfort zone. I came out of London in my little crimpling suit, never been out of Yorkshire, and there was a chap called John Bond who interviewed me at Windsor, slaughtered me, actually completely slaughtered me. It didn't put me at rest. I was like a gibbering wreck. I wanted it so badly, but I just couldn't convey it. And didn't get the gig, and that was my first major knockback. Interestingly, I subsequently employed 2 people that were on that course. And a long time, John Bond was a very, very famous keeper of the gardens of the Queen, very famous in the annals of history. He was judging one of my gardens at Hampton Court many years ago, and he said, "This is a stunning piece of work." And I actually couldn't resist. I said, "It's not bad for a kid who couldn't make the grade." And what I took from that, actually, seriously to this day, is when I get young kids into my office for interview, I just relax and we talk about football, talk about motorbikes, talk about anything but work, actually, because I learned that day, he was in this intimidating office with his tweed jacket and his tight and his badges on, and I was just like, so I still remember that very, very much. So yeah,
it didn't put you off then, did it? So your background then, obviously construction and horticulture, so it's a natural fit, sort of inevitable that you'd go into, take the route you did. So why did you go into business yourself?
Well, it's interesting. So what happened? This is how it happened. So people look at me and say, "Well, he's a construction. He understands construction." Yes, I do, but I love plants, and I trained at Wisley. I did a year of my industrial placement at Wisley, and I just soaked up horticulture, pure horticulture. And I do believe that's a thing that people don't understand. Building gardens, build a landscape, you need to understand all the component parts. So the pure horticulture is stood me in great stead. I was in my dorm at Askenbrine doing my third year, and this guy who was on a HND course read out a letter. It was a Dear John letter, basically from a company down in Twickenham saying, "Look, thanks for your application, but the job would suit more of an OND position. It's a junior management. We're building this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that." I thought, I was literally listening. Doors were open, and he was reading this letter out to a guy in the corridor. So I went and I said, "Hey, give us that letter." And I was doing the course that this guy wanted. So I phoned him. I said, "Is this job still there?" He said, "Yeah." So I went down and got that job, actually. And that's the only job, apart from the 2 years after school, it's the only job I've ever had. Wow. And that was for a company called Squires, who are still a very successful family-owned retail of garden centres. Started in 1935 as landscapers, a small landscape section. And I went as assistant landscape contracts manager. That was in 1982. Got to be honest, I came out of college, didn't really know my arse from my elbow, but I had a lot of enthusiasm. I went there and they had a landscape department servicing the garden centres, bits of patios, bits of fence repairs, pretty bland landscaping. And the manager left after 6 months, and I was 21, nearly 22. And I thought, if I don't step up here, I'm going to get sidelined. So I said to Colin Squire, I said, "Look, I can do this. Give me a job," kind of thing. And he let me run this business. So at that time, we had 8 staff. I was 21, and I was just left to my own devices. And I treated that business like my own business. And before long, I remember the conversation to say, we were doing 250,000 sales at that time in 1982. And I said to Colin Squire, I said, "When I get this business to 1 million, I'll be leaving." Seriously. And before I knew it, I had so much passion and drive and commitment to it that before I knew it, we had 30 men. We were doing 1 million sales. I started courting. I started jumping out of the box of the residential garden centre market and started doing things like, started courting the garden design heroes of the time, your Robin Williams, your David Stevens, your John Brooks, and people like that. And I went from Twickenham, I went to Mayfair, and before I knew it, I was doing really big contracts. Even at the time, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 pounds of business. Wow. And I was completely out of my depth, utterly out of my depth. I remember going to Colin Squire and said, "Colin, look, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. It feels right, but I've got no business training. I don't know my numbers. I'm not running a sweet shop anymore." I was buying grab lorries and cars and hiring guys. And in the end, the only reason I left is because I got no direction from Colin Squire. I got no direction. We never fell out, but I got fed up with people saying, "God, why are you not doing this for yourself?" And as far as I was concerned, if they'd have packaged the right deal, I can honestly say I would still be there, actually.
Good job they didn't.
I love the family, I love the business, but I just wasn't getting the support. I wasn't getting the investment in me that I needed. So I set off in 1980. Well, I set the business up in 88. We didn't start trading until April 89. And I didn't sabotage the business. I didn't take loads of staff. I took one job, actually, which was a Robin Williams scheme. And I said to Colin, look, Colin, I'll give him 2 or 3 months notice. I said, I'd like to do this job, if that's okay. And we did it. And we're still really, really good friends, actually. So, but that's principally how it went. And the ironic thing about it is, in April '89, and my first garden at Chelsea was that year in May, literally. So I hit the ground running with about 6 guys, and this garden came from nowhere. So literally in April, I knew nothing about building at Chelsea. And 4 weeks later, here I was building at Chelsea. It wasn't a garden. It was a garden for Robin Williams. And it was a promotion garden, it was a promotion stand to promote Gateshead Garden Festival. And Robin Williams being a fantastic designer. Robin Williams Senior, sadly deceased now, but he was an amazing guy. Knew his construction inside and out, former contractor, amazing designer. And he built this thing, or designed this thing, that was brickwork and construction. And we didn't really know. We built it. And there's pictures of me, on Main Avenue circa 1989. And the rest is history, basically. But that was the year I started at Chelsea, and I've been there every year since. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing, your enthusiasm, the passion, the drive that you've got, and putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone. Obviously that they're great traits for everyone to have, and anyone listening to this show now, you've got to have that, haven't you? You've got to be really passionate and driven, and really want to make something and get on with it. Put yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone, because then you're going to improve and grow yourself, and you find your own opportunities. Then, don't you? Make your own luck.
I spent most of my life, Nick, out of my comfort zone, and I am doggedly determined. I think initially I was so not ashamed, but I remember being called a gardener and feeling really affronted by that. It was almost like a put down.
Yeah.
Maybe I had a chip on my shoulder. Maybe I wanted to be seen. People call about the word elite, and are they bad things? To me, elitism and being the top of your game is where I've always wanted to be. And the people who listen to this are people who are interested in developing their businesses. Cool. But there's a lot of people who just want to rip people off, who just want to pull the industry down. And I thought the only way I can get out of this or get away from this is to do the most mind-bending, complex pieces of work to put myself away from this pack of crap below me. And I've often been quoted in the press as calling this a tramp's trade. Everybody gets the tools out of their dad's shed and they call themselves a landscape gardener, the landscapers, and it's unregulated. It's in parts very unprofessional. And I've done my utmost, sometimes at penalties, to get away from this kind of moray of low, the benchmark set so low. Yeah. And that's what I've always done, actually. And I think, I'm still driven now, but my God, when I was 28, I was really up for it. I was really, really, really up for it. And I think if you're going to succeed in this business, I'm very, very lucky to have found this, because I genuinely, honestly, I leap out of bed. My wife is amazed that I get up at 4:30 sometimes, and I'm up for it. And I haven't lost any of that.
That's amazing. At 62 years old, it's just in your blood, isn't it? It's just living and breathing.
It's in my blood. So, we're an early morning industry. You've got to get out and lead from the front. And I'm really, really driven by that. And, and I think actually the money is too hard to earn if you're not going to give it your absolutely everything. Yeah. Just really, really dig in deep. And believe me, it's not all been, people think I've got the Midas touch. And as we'll probably come to, it's not always been great for me, but I will never give up. I will doggedly just go. And, also, that my standards are so high that I will not accept anything that I'm not happy with. Yeah. So even if it's costing me money, I put my foot through something and say, guys, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. So my kind of standard bar is set very high. And that helps us achieve what we want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people that come in the industry trying to sort of undercut everyone, are dropping those standards. And that's not fair on the end user, is it? They get ripped off. And they
get ripped off. And, exactly. And I think as an industry, we need to highlight these sharp practices I've never done that. I've never wanted to do that. And sometimes it's painful to lose work, and you put a lot of effort and time, but it's the right thing. You cannot drop your standards for anything.
No, it's your reputation, it's everything you stand for, isn't it? Really. So, so thinking of Landform Consultants, when you started that, what year did you start that?
Well, obviously, I hit an iceberg with a company called Landmark in 2003. So this business was started in 2003. Yeah.
So, but what did that look like then when you started? How many people? What did the office look like? How many vehicles? What kind of jobs did you do? All those kind of things. I mean, what did it look like?
I think before I answer that, Nick, I think I've just kind of thrown a grenade in and said, look, I had a problem with the business, and I think I can't really go forward until I explain what happened to that business, because I had this company called Landmark Design and Build, and I also set up a company called Landmark Gardens. So I had two trading companies, and I had a sleeping partner, an ex-client, a Goldman Sachs high hitter, because I thought that was the right thing to do to grow my business, to get somebody who can understand finance, put systems in for me, developing. Ultimately, it was a complete disaster. He was he's a very hyper clever guy, but he was working on a different scale, and it just wasn't right for me and the business. So that was in the background. But basically, we were trading big. We'd won the Grand Award twice. The business was a fantastic, reputable business. And we were doing 7 million turnover back in just around 2000. We took on a job, and ultimately, all this stuff, it's easy to blame anybody, but ultimately, you can only blame yourself. Yeah. But I took this job on, which was a not a nice guy. Turned out he was a professional knocker of companies, and stitched me right up, really, actually. Completely stitched me up. So I lost about 400,000 on that, stopped paying me, and I just got myself really in a pickle. And painful time, a really, really painful time, because the business was a great business, probably under-financed, probably trading on its toes. Didn't really have the experience. I didn't have the experience to run a business of that size. And ultimately, I was at first at a crossroads. I had 100,000 unsecured overdraft, which we never ever used. Do I pay that? My house was, it wasn't so good against my house. And what the hell do I do? What the hell do I do? If I can trade out of this, but guess what? I've got a sleeping partner that's not working who owns 30% of the business. And I was faced with some really tough calls. I had some really, really black weeks. So basically, I knew I was going to hit an iceberg in May. In May 2003, I knew I was going to hit it. And the reason I was going to hit it was the VAT quarter and the tax quarter was due in September. And there were big numbers, and the money was drying out. So literally, and I was locked on to an iceberg that I could see. This didn't come, this did. So we packed a lifeboat, we appointed a liquidator, and I imploded that business. For the right reasons. It's painful. Go to accreditation. 3 people turned up at a credits meeting, which basically says the way that we professionally did it. We paid all our small subcontractors. We made pacts and deals with people, because you can't just pay everybody and then knock off the big PLC. So it was a very tough time for us. But basically what I did is I kept the purest parts of Landmark and the best staff. Sadly, I couldn't keep everybody. And then we started. And interestingly, what had happened, this is a business, a kind of thing. So even to this day, my maintenance company, which is Landform Maintenance Limited, so I trade as 2 separate limited companies, and my maintenance company buys all the capital equipment, the trucks, all the mowers, the diggers, all the kit that we have, and we've probably got about £500,000, probably more, of capital equipment, and then we throw it back, and that was the same back in that day. And I remember going to my liquidators meeting and saying, hey, all your capital equipment we can't touch because it's with another company. And I said, well, that if you look, when that was set up, that was 3 years previous to this. The intention wasn't to rip anybody off, but in hindsight, that was a really good business lesson to learn. And we still adopt that, because no matter how good you are, you get professional non-players, it's a very volatile, business, and our maintenance business is very, very stable. It trades very, very evenly, and that's how we run it internally now. So, I mean, various companies have holding companies, but we have two limited company trading companies. And I mean, that's just a lesson to learn, not put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And, you know, I learned a lot of valuable business lessons. I mean, Rolls-Royce went bust. Simon Cowell went bust.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a horrible thing, but because I was a very high-profile company, you know, Horticulture Week, everybody wanted to, and oh my God, it was like a big ripple in the pond. Have you heard about Mark Gregory? He's gone bust. And it was painful. It was really painful. I never changed my phone numbers. A couple of people that felt wronged came in and had some really interesting conversations. And some of those people that were wronged, I lost, said, look, stick 10% on the bills, we go forward. You know, this has happened. I was up front. I didn't run away and hide and stick my head in the sand. Yeah. I fronted it. I faced up to it. You know, so people who know me well know that's absolutely true. And my ethics, my honorability are very, very, are really what I stand for.
Yeah.
And you cannot run it. It's all right talking to the press when things are good, but when things go wrong, no, I don't want to talk to you. I had to talk to them. And I actually remember saying to this chap called Matthew Appleby, who's got a reputation for being a bit of a sensational. I said, and he said, look, I've heard you've got problems. Would you talk to me? I said, yeah, I'll talk to you. I said, but if you misprint me, I'll fucking break your neck. Seriously. You tell it as I'm going to tell you. Yeah. And I actually genuinely meant it. I'm not a violent person at all, but I said, I'm really bruised here.
Yeah.
I've just lost everything.
Yeah.
And in fairness to him, he printed it word for word, you know.
Good.
So, yeah. So from then on, we started, it was really surreal. So 2003, 2004, started trading. No, 2003 actually. Yeah, 2003, September 2003, with this pure little company. I had no phone ringing. I had no salespeople phoning me. I had no distractions. I had nothing going on. I had no barley, no APL, nothing. It was just pure. And we built this garden for Luciana, and the picture's on my boardroom. And it was an exemplar of how to build a job, because we just focused on it. We had no distractions, just get our heads down. You know, we'd fallen off our bike, bruised our knees, and we got back on. And to this day, it's probably one of the most iconic gardens I've ever built, and certainly one of the most profitable. You know, we cleared a lot of money because we were focused and we were hungry to get back. And so 2 years I couldn't become a barley member. 2 years I couldn't be APL. You know, I didn't do any judging. I got the certain people dissed me. And there's certain people who phone me up and say, hey, Mark, you know, you're a good guy. What do you need? You know, what help do you need? Yeah. So I kind of learned a lot about myself, my strengths, and I knew that I needed to be a lot sharper running the business. And I don't think there was like the services that you're offering now, Nick. I don't think back then there was specific for landscapers. And you know, we've had some interesting, you know, times since, and they're gradually getting better. You know, and they've been getting better for years, actually, for me. But I can't tell you that story without saying, you know, how I fell off the bike, really.
Yeah. Well, look, I think anyone who's ever made anything like really big, you know, like the Richard Bransons, Alan Sugars, anyone who you can think who's been successful, most of them have either very close to being bust or gone bust. And people just think that the successful people, it's just like an overnight success. But most people have got all the scars to prove it, haven't they, really?
I've got loads of scars. Yeah. I've got loads of scars. But what I haven't got the scars of is ripping people off or doing substandard work.
Yeah.
I've done work at a loss to me because we've messed up the quotes or underestimated it or just been naive into the outputs and we're too desperate to be busy or too desperate to be working. You know, so I've done those mistakes. I have literally made some mistakes, a lot of mistakes. I could write a book on mistakes. The question is not to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah, absolutely. You fail your way to success, don't you? That's the expression. Fail your way to success, because you've got to do something. It doesn't always go right, but as long as you learn from those mistakes and don't repeat them, like you say, then you're going to go in the right direction.
There was a very famous president. I forget which American president it was. It says, "A man who hasn't made a mistake is a man who hasn't tried."
Yeah.
The bottom line is, I've grabbed all of the tiger's tail on many schemes, and I'm been punching way above my weight. But I believe in myself, and I believe in my ability, and I believe in how to talk to people and get things done. And it's interesting. It's even right up to date. People around me say, like, "What? The Tower of London as a job. Why did you take that on? It's massively risk." But I'm good at managing risk, and my job now in the business is analysing risk. Is what I do. Is I look for that minefield. I look for those icebergs.
So, what are the biggest mistakes you've made, or what are the biggest lessons that you've learned? Would you say, Mark?
I think looking back to the early years, and I think those early years are fundamental. You want to play with the big boys. You want that piece of shiny kit. You want to possibly run before you can walk. And I would say that's the probably most dangerous time. When you're tiny and you've just got you and a lad, you can probably trade through tough times. It's making those transitions to having an office, to several crews, and managing it and managing time. I think actually that's the most dangerous time for smaller businesses. I find that you're working on your own, you're very, very lonely, you don't necessarily know exactly possibly what you're doing. I think one of the issues for me when I started out, I had lots of artisans, technical skills, but nobody told me about money. Nobody prepared me to trade, to basically the art of doing business. And it is an art, and it takes time. Thankfully for me, a lot of my early mistakes were done when I worked for Squires, and I didn't intentionally. And I think I made them more money than I lost them money, but I certainly made mistakes. And nowadays we've trodden that world path. And if we're making mistakes now, it's pretty bad that we're making the same mistakes. But I think the bottom line is, when you're trading, you're possibly over trading. You're not managing your cash. You're spending money because you need equipment, you need vans, you need tools. So everything's working against you, but you are learning, and you are learning the art of doing business. So I suppose for me, did we make some horrendous mistakes? We did. I think we never did bad work, but we undervalued what we did. We didn't necessarily understand the market and what the market would charge. We didn't understand our limitations. And I think we were pretty gung-ho. We thought we could conquer the world, which in some way is a really good attitude to have. If you're an entrepreneur and you're out and you're doing it and you're happy to be in the job, but you really need to understand the art of doing business. And obviously there's people like yourselves offering mentoring. I think that's a no-brainer. And if I was doing all again, that's what I would have. I would get somebody to hold my hand and talk me through the steps and help me write a business plan and help me understand the numbers and do them. And I think, my time at the APL was putting out the business improvement schemes in place and working on your business, working on that. And I still see it now. I still see guys who don't manage the VAT, don't manage the tax. It's not your money. Don't spend it, and get themselves in a pickle, massive pickle, because, they are good at what they do, but not necessarily good at running a business.
It's so two totally different things, aren't they? Because just because you're a great landscaper, a great builder, or a great any business, it's the operational stuff that is so different. There's a whole different set of skills to go from running a business and building a landscaping project. They're two totally different things. And that's part of the reason why we've set this up, this whole podcast, is because we're learning from people that run great landscaping businesses, not just really good at what they do, but actually run profitable businesses. And it's picking the brains of people like yourself to understand what those things are, what are the most important things they need to know, so that they don't go bust and trip up along the way.
I think leaving money on a client's table or whatever, it's a commercial project or a residential people. I hate the thought of ripping anybody off.
Yeah.
You basically, I think you need to have a no fear approach of talking about money, understanding money. And anybody who says, well, it's not about that, it's about, no, it's not. It's about running that business. That business needs to make money. You need to retain profit. You need to be profitable, and you need to plow that money back into your business.
Yeah.
So anybody who thinks and I think it's a naive way of looking at it, that it's not about the money, it's not that important, will not be around.
No, there'll be no business.
Will be no business. So I think, in my mind, it's a very, our business, our kind of core business, we make our money in this office. The guys on site don't particularly lose money. We lose money in the office. The way we buy, the way we procure, the way we estimate, the way we understand and the way we manage our money. And I remember a long time ago, 25 years ago, I heard a conversation, and it was some garden designers that were talking about, it was then Landmark, and they said, well, Landmark's great, but they are they're very contractual. And I thought, you know what? That's probably the best compliment you could pay me, actually, because literally there's nothing wrong. And I see the contractors, they fall for the same banana skin every time. Oh, while you're here, can you just do that? We're all getting on well. They put in the bill, variations. My perfect contract will have no variations, no extras. It causes more grief than it is. But now we've learnt the art of doing business. We have learnt the art, and it is an art, actually. It's a whole set of skills. And I would say to anybody, understand. And if you can't, get on board. And the thing is, it's a lot easier now than it ever was when I started out.
Yeah, it's all out.
Well, you've got people like the associations, and you've got all these little meetings and cluster group meetings where you're getting involved with a load of contractors who are drinking beer and talking about day works and talking about stuff. You have to fully engage, and I have all the time. I've learned from my peers. I've watched what's going on. I pay a lot of attention, even now, actually, what's going on around me and who's doing what, and all that stuff. And I think, actually, if you want to grow, if you don't want to grow, then don't worry about it. But if you want to grow a successful business, I think you need to completely, fully engage in that industry, and take a bit from people like yourselves, employ somebody like yourselves to help you. Surround yourself by good accountants, people that won't just say yes to you, but will kick back at you and say, well, what are you doing?
Absolutely.
And you need help. And there's nothing that I think possibly why people look at me is because I'm one of those guys. I'm a guy who, I understand my technical landscaping, but did I understand spreadsheets and profit and loss? No, I didn't. It frightened me. I wasn't really interested.
Yeah, you learn.
But it's probably the most important thing we do as a business now. Understand our numbers and understand the money, and not be frightened to engage with clients about money.
Yeah. So along those lines, then, what would your top 3 tips be then? If you could suggest ways to improve efficiencies or the profits of a business, what 3 tips would you give? Bloody
hell. That's a phone a friend question. It really is. That really is.
Yeah, that's hit you. Yeah, that's caught you off guard.
Well, I think.
I'm sure you know the answer.
I don't know the answer, but all I can do is I'll talk around it and hopefully get to the answer. Yeah. If you take a Chelsea Flower Show, Chelsea Flower Show as a perfect contract. If you look at it from a contractual point of view, you've basically got a fully focused team. You've got a client who really wants that medal. You've got a designer who really wants the accolades. And you've got 18 days to build that exemplar. No messing about, no changes, no downtime. Oh, we'll get to that, and that's been delayed, and all the things that cost you money. And if you look at that, and we make money at Chelsea, we don't do it for ego. We make money, and it's part of our business model. So on a good year, we can do 500,000 of sales at Chelsea. This year's probably about 360 on sales. But we plan for it. You plan for it. You plan, and you deliver. And there's no machines running over, or there's no death by kind of variations and all that stuff. It's the perfect contract.
Yeah.
So for me, what can I take into my business is, planning phase, to make sure you're really planning well, that you're not bullied into starting or pricing it in a haste. So it starts for me in the planning phase. If you get somebody, and we all get it, price, I need it back next week. No. If you haven't got time to price it, walk away from it. If you've got time to price it and you need more time, ask for more time, but price it properly. So I would say it's the planning phase. Get the planning phase right, and then buy well. Make sure that you procure it well, and then make sure you've got the right guys at the right time to do the right project. And we've all done it. And it's feast or famine in our business, our landscaping generally. 1 minute you've got no work, next minute you're absolutely besieged with work. So. And I think as you get older, you say, yeah, I've been there, done that, got that. Now I don't need that stress in my life, and you could be a little bit more choosy. But I think, I think by doing things at haste is what costs you money. And actually, I mentioned earlier a term, manage the risk. So if I'm looking at a piece of work, for instance, it's a hull, it's on clay, and it's going to happen in winter. Guess what? It's not going to be potentially very, very good for us. So, if it's the access is really bad and it's on clay, or the soil types. So I would look at the access of a project, and I'll look, sure, we can build anything. As a company, I'm not put off by technical challenges. I'm put off by risk. And I get a flavor of the clients, or the report the clients giving me, the signals they're giving me. And I think it's better to be a busy to rather than be a busy fool to have another day in bed and walk away. Be prepared to walk away and listen to your gut instincts.
Yeah, dodge a bullet.
Listen to those signs. When I go to a building site and there's builders on there, I will actually go and ask and talk to the plumbers, or what's it like? You get a feel. You get a feel for the cleanliness of the site, the way that it's been organized, and you get, the people will share information. Oh yeah, fucking Clark's a right wanker. He didn't pay his bills. You can save yourself a lot of headache by doing a bit of due diligence, very discreetly. So I would say, be careful what you take on, and go into it eyes wide open. I know that's probably more than 3 answers.
Yeah.
But I think people can pick out what they want from that. But I do believe, as I said, I manage risk in our business.
Yeah.
That is principally my job. And I look at all the work. And people say, you physically go and look at all the work. Yeah, I do, actually. I do. Why do I do it? Because I think I'm better than a lot of people in my business for seeing that. I can see logistics. I know craneage. I can see politics. I can see technical skills. I can see various things very quickly. And my estimator is probably, in my opinion, more important to me, is the most important person in my business, actually. More important than me. He's the guy who keeps all the cogs working. And for him to be out of the office on the road, my time is better. It's better managing for me. So that's how we manage that side.
Yeah. It's like investments, isn't it? Any investor, you manage the downside. It's risk management, really, because as long as you're not losing and you're winning, then you don't want to be taking too many losses, do you? Heavy losses, because they're the things that can bring you down.
No, and I think also, I think as you get older and you get more experience, you can be realistic on your outputs and what to charge. Yeah. And avoid getting into a situation where you're getting bullied or driven down by clients or designers, actually. And designers will do that because they've got no necessary concept of cost. Yeah. So I think but I'm a great, if I was starting out again, I'd surround myself by a lot of information. I wouldn't go on the forums particularly, but I would engage to the trade bodies, the cluster groups, the business forums for like-minded people.
Yeah.
That's what I would definitely do.
Feel for everything. So I've got a couple of other questions before we head off. But the penultimate one is, what advice would you give to someone who's a bit stuck at the moment in their business, got to a sort of plateau, wants to expand, but don't really know what those steps are to take? What would you say to them?
Well, that's really interesting. So what I would look at, I'd look at people in my area that I respect. I would look at those businesses. And it sounds an ironic thing, but I would either stalk them or I would really look at them. Or in my case, I get people who phone me up and say, "Can I come and talk to you? Can I just? Yeah, I'm stuck. I have a problem." And I'll say, "Look, I can't see you this month because I'm flat out of Chelsea, but I'll have a coffee with you."
Yeah.
And what I find that, you know, and I know various people like Ken White, Frost, there's loads of different people that are really high hitters who will do that, who will basically mentor smaller companies. And so I'm not expecting everybody to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Mark, can I book a slot?" Please,
what you wish for.
But the bottom line is, I think reach out. I think join your local cluster groups.
Yeah.
Go to the APL or the Barley cluster groups and drill into it.
Yeah.
And I find that if you're open and giving back, you can glean a lot of information. You can get a lot of information. Yeah. And as I said to you earlier, Nick, I've often given a lot of information because I don't care if somebody wants to emulate us. It's because, you know, they'll do it differently. And there's lots of different ways to run a successful business. But I'm always learning, and I've got a thirst for improving ourselves. I don't feel as though we've achieved where we need to be. That's probably the difference. I'm like a lot of the people you mentioned earlier, Paul Downers, they're hungry to improve profitability. Their lifestyles and work on their exiting plans and things like that. So yeah, it's a full time. But actually, I regard running business like a game. It's a game. It's just a great game. And I think if you look at it like that, then it's very easy to beat yourself up. And we've all had horrendous days where it's raining, you're losing money, guys bringing in the vans smashed up. We've all had those days. But if you look through that, I actually think it's a bit of a state of mind. And I'm blessed. I never lose sleep ever. I never lose sleep about anything I take on. Yeah. I sleep like a horse. I just out. And if I was wake up in the night worried, that's the time when I would really have to critically look at what I'm doing. You know, I think you've got to enjoy it. You've got to work on it. I think it's all about upping your professional appeal, from your marketing to where you look, the way you present yourself.
Oh, perception.
The whole perception, but also always be. For me, I surround myself by young, brighter people than me. That's kind of my game plan.
Yeah, good.
Anybody I'm not threatened by taking somebody who's a lot sharper than I am. I never have been, actually, and I think that's a good thing to do. You know,
it's a common theme with a lot of the people we had on the show already, is to employ people that are better than you in certain areas. Obviously, if you get involved, then sometimes you can make things worse. So let it.
But equally, stick to what you're good at. I mean, can I do a certain amount of accountancy to a degree? But actually, I employ good people. I employ good people.
That enjoy it. People that are better. They're
better than me. I stick to what my core strengths are. Is logistics, looking at angles, looking at the angle to do a job. That's what I'm good at.
Yeah, play everyone to their strengths.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including yourself, isn't it?
Including yourself. And, the thing is, and I think if you do that, and I know lots of landscapers who try to do their own accounts, bog themselves down and all that stuff.
Can't do it on your own, can you? Shouldn't do it on your own.
No, so you need to surround yourself by a team of people that will package things up and give you in bite-sized helping hands,
Yeah, and it's getting the right people, because if you trust the wrong people, then that's dangerous as well. So you've got to make sure you have got the right advice and the right skills with the right people on the bus, because otherwise you probably wish you did do it yourself.
There's an adage there: don't assume anything. No. Don't assume anything. Like we all see our landscapers, we all see these gypsies who are reputing to do this amazing work and stealing other people's images, and so don't be taken in. And I would say is that you're putting a lot of time and investment and your family's time and money into your company. And I think actually do the research. So if you're finding an accountant, interview several people and see if there's a synergy there. See how you can work. And people buy from people. And I've been blessed by, maybe it's good luck or maybe it's a bit of due diligence, but I've got a really, really good team around supporting our business. I've got an accountant that's purely works on strategic level to the board, and I've got a day-to-day accountant who's great on the numbers, but won't give me the big global picture. And I love being on the journey. I genuinely, I absolutely love being on the journey, and sometimes you've just got to accept that some days are going to be crap. And that's just
it's not always one smooth journey, is it? It's you're going to get a few bumps in the road, and that's life, that's business, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
So Mark, I've got one final question for you, and if there was just one golden nugget, one piece of advice that you could give anyone trying to build their business from all of your years of being in business and all your experience, all your ups and downs, all your everything you've learned, what would that one thing be?
I want to give you half a dozen, actually. I really do. But
if you can give me half a dozen in 1 minute, I'll let you have that.
Okay. Well, okay. So never drop your standards. Ever drop your standards.
Brilliant.
Always maintain your ethics and professionalism. Never lose your drive or your passion. And if you haven't got passion, employ somebody who can give that passion. Because passion is effective in sales. And then learn the things that you need to learn. I would say, in my case, it's the financials, it's the process. It's putting the process in.
Brilliant. Wow. I could speak to you all day, and I'm sure people could listen to you all day as well. But unfortunately, we can't speak all day. But maybe we'll get you back again another time at a later date. But look, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, obviously we don't want people inundating you with your diary be full of people asking you to pick your brains. But if there's any way people can get in touch with you for either projects going forward, or if they do really need to pick your brains, what would be the best way?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm on Instagram, so it's Mark Gregory Landscaper. You can send me a message on that. My email's on my company website. I will answer as many things, but obviously you appreciate that things are so busy. It's so busy. And the other thing I would say is and I hear all the time, landscapers are not getting back on sales inquiries. It gets so busy, they're not calling people. And I really worry when I can't get back to, return calls. So if somebody's calling me and trying to get some advice and I'm not responding because I'm buried, I mean, the adage is if you want something done, ask a busy man. And I am really busy. This last year is incredibly busy. But if I can help in a way, then sure, email me and I'll give you a bullet, some bullets. But I haven't got time to write you chapter and verse, sadly.
No.
I one of the things I'd love to be remembered for is a guy who set the bar high, who was had his ethics in the right place, but also helped other people and actually helped the next generation. And I think that's really important, actually.
Yeah, amazing.
That's what I tried to do when I had my time at the APL. I was APL chair for 7 years. And what I put in there was this kind of community where younger landscapers could reach out to the likes of me and say, and I've seen things that I shouldn't have seen, not sharp practice, but naivety. And if I could have helped somebody lose a load of nights of no sleep and worry, then I feel duty bound to do that. I genuinely do.
Yeah. Well, this is a platform that will obviously they'll hear your voice and hear your advice and hopefully take that advice on board and not make the same mistakes. If we can avoid the mistakes and from someone else's previous mistakes, then obviously we've done our job. But
every day is a school day.
Absolutely.
Every single day is a school day for us, for everybody who are pushing boundaries and trying to do a better job within the industry. Every day you're learning.
Yeah.
Which is one of the good things that we love about it, because you never get bored. It's always something to test you,
Yeah, the dangerous day is if the day you think you've cracked it. That's the dangerous part of business.
Believe me, I haven't cracked it. I haven't cracked. You've never heard me say I've cracked what I'm doing. I'm really on top of the pile. I work really, really hard to get this business into a position where it is, but it's so tough to keep there. And what I see underneath me is a lot of young talent. I see a lot of companies coming into this industry that have got their stall set out properly, and I've seen that. There's a lot of change, I think. There's a lot of, and hopefully people, look towards our companies and people like us and get inspired to get to that next level, and good on them, good on them. There's enough scope for good contractors, for good people, for good landscapers. There's tons of great opportunities. And one of the good things, and I'll shut up, is after post-pandemic, it's probably one industry that has really, really done very well out of this horrible situation. Every chairman, CEO are all stuck at home, and the opportunities to grow our businesses over the next few years. And there's going to be some tough trading, but we've got more opportunities than a lot of industries. We're set in a good position.
Absolutely. Well, look, if Mark Gregory is still learning, then everyone needs to keep learning. So, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Really, really, really appreciate your time and all the effort you've put into this podcast, and I know that people are going to really greatly appreciate it. So, a massive thank you from me. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nick. Thank you.
Cheers, Mark. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.